So we are very fortunate to have this very esteemed panel join us to provide us food for thought in terms of how we should be thinking about digital risk management. So I'll start with asking our panel to quickly introduce themselves so you can get to know them a little bit.
Good morning, Vishal Salvi. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for Infosys. I also head the cybersecurity practice, which is the business go-to-market function.
Hello, good morning. I'm Aswami Arifin, Senior Vice President of Cybersecurity Responsive. Basically, it's a national specialist agency back in Malaysia.
Morning, everyone, and thanks for inviting us to this. It's a great privilege and honour to have this opportunity to talk to everyone here. Andrew Woodward, I'm the Executive Dean of Science at Edith Cowan University, but I've been working in cybersecurity for almost 20 years now. As we say, since before we used to call it cybersecurity.
So without further ado, let's dive right in. And what I'll try to do is frame a question and then maybe invite a few of the panelists to comment on it from their different vantage points. So the first question is around, right here in Singapore, the nation is moving towards becoming a smart nation, and there's a lot of smart city-related initiatives, and this is generally true for the entire Asia-Pac region. So the question, maybe I'll start with Dr. Aswami. From your lens, from the kind of the public sector, what risks do you see and have worried about in terms of the smart city initiatives?
Thank you for the question. This is a very big challenge back in Malaysia. We were tasked to look into digital economy, digital disruptions and whatnot. So part of the application is to develop smart cities and whatnot. So having said that, of course, every new initiative, for example, like if we talk about smart cities, it comes with risk, as being known as digital risk. But having said that, to embrace digital, so that as an organization, individuals, or as for their country, we can move on, and from there onwards, we'll be able to appreciate that it makes things more efficient. At the end of the day, it is beneficial, not only for organizations, individuals, but also for the nation. And at the same time, it comes with the risk. Of course, any new initiative, we must be able to understand the risk. And from there onwards, what the government is doing is calling the ministry to sit down, interagency and whatnot, to understand the risk. So from there, of course, we appreciate that by embracing digital economy or by embarking into digital economy, it will create something new, efficiency and whatnot. So the risk, the attack surface, as I've mentioned back in Malaysia, we are opening the cyber floodgate, by embracing 4IR and whatnot. So with all these technologies enablers to the digital economy, digital initiative, so that the establishment of cybersecurity measures, so that we understand the risk and put forth the solutions. For example, like by having an advanced security operations center and whatnot, and by establishing a program called Cybersecurity Collaborative Partnership, so that the ecosystem is fruitful, is good by working with interagencies, public and private sectors and whatnot, so that to achieve the aspiration to be a digital-driven nation. So it is, smart city is just part of the application. We are looking into other things, IoT-driven initiative, for example, like smart manufacturing and whatnot. So the thing is, the key word here as a takeaway, to understand the digital risk, and of course at the end of the day, to be able to create awareness, to be able to inform the stakeholder, for example, like Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Economic Affairs back in Malaysia. This is the thing, this is what we should be doing, this is the solution. And I think the initiative has taken, a good progress or development back in Malaysia, whereby we are having, for example, like last week, we are having inter-agencies, not only the ministries, sit down together, but inter-agency, the enabler, to understand the technicalities, to understand the policy, guidelines and whatnot. So I think that's about it for the time being.
Great, thank you. Great thoughts there. Not just do the work to manage digital risk, but communicate it to the right stakeholders. Both of those are valuable. Maybe I'll throw one over to you, Vishal. From a private sector perspective, what type of cybersecurity risks, as you work with customers in this region and others, what's the private sector lens on this challenge?
So I think when you look at cybersecurity, there are quite a few of risks which are very common. For example, the increased attack surface, you talk about the impact of advanced malware, and some of these things are very generic and they impact all the industries. But what I find very fascinating is in terms of how cyber differs from a point of view of risk perspective as you go across industries. So for example, if you go to banking industry, the cyber crime and what's happening around that space is prominent. When you look at technology companies, it's all about B2B, and so therefore your reputation and your brand, from our customers' perspective, becomes very important. Especially IT companies, which are processing, are helping organization in digital transformation and sometimes also helping their cyber transformation. It's very important that they remain protected and they're protecting their customers' data. So reputation becomes extremely important. If we talk about aviation industry, you're talking about human safety now and cybersecurity impacting human safety. When you talk about manufacturing, you talk about availability of plants and, with so much of tension being built with OT and ICT trying to connect together, the OT risks are extremely important, and how do we really manage those cyber risks are very important. So that's extremely fascinating in terms of while the topic is same, the way in which each private sector organization is trying to solve that is varying, and therefore even the board level conversations change depending on this, right? And so you would want to have both the aspects of your risk management in place, which is one is in terms of what you would want to do at an infrastructure level in terms of the basic hygiene. And then what is the conversation that you need to really have with your business owners, which are really looking at the business risk, and then how do you engage and how do you partner with them to manage that risk? So I think that's the way I would look at it, in terms of how the flavors are changing.
Very good. Thank you for that. Professor Woodward, from a academia perspective as an educator, what are universities in the region thinking about growing the next generation InfoSec talent to manage these new types of risks?
Yeah, great question. I mean, there's a wide variety of technological solutions, as we're here talking about today, but the reality is that the manpower skill shortage is really the biggest threat that we face in terms of addressing the cybersecurity challenge. There's, depending on which stats you read, there's somewhere between 3 to 3.5 million global shortage of cybersecurity professionals descending upon us in the next couple of years. So for us, that really is the big focus of what we're doing. We've been offering programs in cybersecurity for 16 years, and we currently have well over 1,000 students in our cybersecurity programs. And in fact, here in Singapore, we've partnered with PSB Academy, and we started teaching our undergraduate cybersecurity program here, commencing a couple of months ago. So we're certainly working with partners in the region to address that. But I think the real key is engagement, and the universities in of themselves trying to tackle any challenge by themselves is always a bad idea. So it's really crucial that education providers and partners are working with industry, such as RSA, and also government to really make sure that they're addressing the problems that we're seeing out there. It's no good turning out graduates that are able to work in some narrow aspect of cybersecurity that really no one's looking at or that really doesn't want. So it's really crucial for that engagement to occur.
Fantastic, thank you. Let's maybe the next question will get your own personal take at digital transformation. So I invite each of you to give us an example, your favorite example of what you're seeing on the front lines in terms of digital disruption. A favorite example that maybe from what you've seen around you in terms of pre-digital, the world looked a certain way, and when with the digital disruption, it's upending the kind of the norm. And what does that translate in terms of your lives as sort of cybersecurity or risk professionals? How has your life changed as a function of that disruption? So your favorite example.
Me first, all right. That's a really tough question. I think probably the biggest thing that I've seen is a lack of change. We have had this big shift to digital, and yet the approach that we're taking really is still largely one of a pre-digital mindset. We generally in the ecosystem, we don't have a great grasp of risk management, and certainly not when it comes to looking at how we tackle the cyber challenge, or we approach it from the perspective of, well, we've kind of always done it this way, so we'll keep doing that.
That's a great point. We're trying to apply kind of an incremental approach and an analog approach to the digital world, and hoping it works out.
The more they change, the more they stay the same. Yeah.
Great point. Thank you, Dr. Swamy.
I think to start first, for example, like to share with my kids, if you read digital disruptions, it has a negative connotation altogether. But I've tried to instill. I mean, if you are talking about personal, understanding or personal thoughts towards digital disruption. So to me, the keyword is how do we put a digital culture, for example, like to start back at home, so that they would be able to understand this is the way forward. For example, like I've told them, hey, why not you invest yourself to put a career in cybersecurity, to do a lot of software engineering, because the scarce of human power or human supply towards achieving the aspiration to achieve digital economy, for example. Yeah, so it's part of the national program back in Malaysia, so that we have a constant supply of digital security experts or practitioners. So again, I've told them that this is a good thing. This is for the keyword again, efficiency. It makes things easier. For example, like I bought them cars. So with the prevalency of e-hailing and whatnot, so they said that it is more economical, by having or by embracing, by going through e-hailing rather than to have their own vehicle. So again, back in Malaysia, what we like, as a government agency, to put a culture so that they would not hesitate, because of they have heard about, attack surface is getting broader, the malware is getting more sophisticated, and so on and so forth. So we are creating a lot of awareness back in the country, back in Malaysia.
Very good, thank you. Vishal, any thoughts from you?
So my personal good example of digital transformation is actually the financial inclusion story of India, where so much of disintermediation has happened because of how we have been able to really reach out to the banking and the easy access to banking through digital transformation. But I think in terms of if you look at the history of cybersecurity, and Professor, I've been also in cybersecurity by accident, been here for 2 decades now. But the transformation, we've seen always that the cybersecurity world has always been behind the innovation, right? And so if you look at in terms of what's happening in, and we as an organization in Infosys have been transforming various digital aspects and assets of our customers, and what we are seeing is that whether it's sharing economy, or we're talking about connected cars, you're talking about huge adoption of analytics to really change the business model, all of this innovation, and now we're talking about agile. The speed at which you want to really bring about the change is now a 6-week cycle. It's no longer the 6 months or the 1-year cycles or projects that we were talking about in past. So so the rate of change is actually putting a lot of pressure on the CISOs and even the CIOs to really see how do you embed and build in security while this change is happening. And that I think is a very interesting change. Now we've done a very large customer survey, and one of the important findings of the survey was that of all the things that you want to do in digital transformation, cybersecurity is number one as a foundational block for that transformation to happen. If you want to really reach out and you want to go fast and you want to expand your reach, you need to really have security and strong brakes in that whole program. And so I guess it is really now putting a lot of pressure on the overall, and as Rohit you mentioned, it's a teamwork and all the whole ecosystem need to respond because the change is happening, and we need to respond to create similar agile methods and frameworks and adaptive solutions which can support that transformation.
Great.
So that's
thoughts.
really, important thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Question number 3 takes us into the realm where we had a couple of questions from the audience here around data, right? So let's go into the data garage. And I gave my recipe for how to deal with that issue. So this is a matter of trust, right? Governments, private sector organizations, their ability to manage, constituent data is essential for trust. Trust is foundational to the digital economy. What recipes do you guys have in terms of what's a good answer? What are people doing? How are people thinking about the problem? What are you recommending? And we'll go in reverse order this time. So start with you, Vishal.
So I think the notion that you can do data discovery and data classification is a wishful thinking. But I guess empowering the users and training the users to take control and charge of that information is the way to go. So my sense is that the world will adopt rights management and encryption in a very big way. And the moment you are empowering the users to take charge of protection of the data and the protection travels no matter where the information goes, is the way to really solve this problem.
Great thought. Thank you.
For a national agency, our approach is two-pronged. The first thing is to settle on the policy. For example, like in September, most probably we're gonna launch our Malaysian cybersecurity strategy. So this is just to provide confidence level to the citizenship, so that they would be able to appreciate that the government is embarking into digital initiative and whatnot. So they understand that there's an entity that would be able to, for them to refer. For example, like if we are talking about technicals, we are, empowering or strengthen our Malaysian CERT to be able to understand cyber force, IR intelligence. For example, like, to be proactive in the realm of responsive, to be able to understand what's coming forth in the future by using, machine learning and whatnot. And of course, at the end of the day, if you have a very solid solution or planning and whatnot, risk will be still there. So what we do is we have a CERT, so that anything happens for the users, organizations, or any entity, there would be computer emergency response team to be able to lend their technical assistance. And at the end of the day, most probably they want to understand the root cause of it. Then we are training our staff and whatnot, so that we are able to do forensics analysis. And altogether we are promoting the philosophical of I3, we call it cyber I3, intelligence, incidents, and also investigation. This is the program that we try to create awareness, so that the users would be able to understand. It is a big challenge to tell the government officers to embrace digital, to tell the children to be able to understand this is the way forward, because they are born with IT or ICT. It's not like me, most probably I was born in the third industrial revolution. But this student, so that they embrace, they appreciate and they will be able to understand that this is the trust, this is the confidence in terms of action being taken if there is any if we can catch the cyber criminal. There's a law, for example, like cyber security law, so that things can be prosecuted accordingly. So at the end, they want to say here, this is the programs, this is the policy, two things, technical and also policy, to be able to create the trust. The keyword is the trust.
Oh, that's great thoughts in terms of the role of the regulator as well as the role of smart, educated citizenry that is aware of the risk around the data. Very important. So thank you. Andrew?
I think when it comes to, it's really good, and it's a great point you raised about users taking control and encryption. I think we're seeing a really interesting tension at the moment within governments between the drive to increase cybersecurity through data breach and privacy legislation, which I think is a great positive in terms of getting organisations to really address what they're doing around cybersecurity. But at the same time, we're seeing governments also trying to erode that ability for users to be able to take control and be custodians of their own data. For example, recently in the US, we've seen the FBI try to have to force Apple to give up encrypted data when it comes to solving law enforcement issues. In Australia at the moment, we're seeing the government about to try to legislate that companies have to have the ability to provide law enforcement with unencrypted data, which is really interesting. At the same time, they're also introducing legislation which says you have to really be good custodians of that data. So I think it's a real ongoing tension and a challenge there.
Our next question takes us into outside of cybersecurity. So while cybersecurity or cyber risk is one aspect of digital risk, that's not all of it. That's not all of digital risk. So maybe Vishal and Dr. Aswamy, from your perspective, can you comment on other types of risks you're seeing emerge because of this transformational effort in public and private sector?
So I think from a private sector point of view, the failing to ride on the journey of digital transformation itself is a risk. I think organizations who don't...
Largest risk we face is not taking any risk and just sitting on our...
Yeah. And I think there are clearly, various dimensions to it. One is in terms of, being how do you get... It's an organization change management problem, right? Because you are really, looking at the foundation of your business models and rapidly changing them, to make this work. The traditional boundaries of the CIOs are diminishing. And the CIO have to emerge into CDOs or people who can help in driving the digital transformation, and they need to almost cannibalize some of the work that they do to be able to do that. On the public side, there are so many different dimensions. I talked about the financial inclusion, the immense possibilities that digital transformation brings to the government to be able to reach and to really change the smart cities, in terms of smart policing, forensic investigation, things which were not possible earlier can be made possible, and there are many use cases now, available right now, which can be done in terms of, empowering different government agencies to do things differently, and so my sense is, while these two things are happening, there is anyway rapid change which is happening. You're talking about sharing economy, you're talking about Internet of Things, where everything is connected, and so therefore is able to collect data, and you need to see how we can make meaningful use of the data. At the same time, ensure that it's not misused, and so risk linked to that in terms of how do you do that, and also this professor talked about the tension between security and privacy, and I think we're just beginning to see that emerge, and at some stage we'll have a good equilibrium and balance in terms of how are you able to achieve both the objectives, and they're not in conflict with each other, but they complement each other. But I guess these are some of the things that you need to keep in mind beyond cyber in terms of risk in digital transformation.
Right. Thank you.
I think the biggest risk is not getting the budget. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's quite subjective when we mention about digital city or smart cities. It depends to the scope or specification, the use case by itself. So this is important. That's why we are providing consultation to the government. For example, like let's say if they want to embark to a certain project, smart city project, let's say in the south and whatnot. So we are telling them, apart from cybersecurity risk, whereby we understand the cybersecurity risk, there's also a budget for that. It's not cheap. And also at the same time, we are telling them about regulation, operation, continuity of the project, so that it won't become a white elephant project at the end of the day. Yeah, because we have seen many. The government, for example, like in Malaysia, we have changed from the former government to the new government. Of course, certain politician or minister, they would want to have new project and whatnot. So we remain as a professional, as a national specialist agency, to be able to tell them that apart from cybersecurity risks, there are other risks, and you should think of in terms of operation, regulation. And for example, like Vishal mentioned about forensics, and if there is anything happen with respect to smart cities and whatnot, so there is a forensics capability to be able to provide report and analysis, so that we understand in terms of what's happening if there is any incidents or cases, to these projects.
Great thoughts. Thank you. Maybe one last question. Keeping an eye on time. This one pertains to digital and its aspect of velocity. So one of the traits of digital is just the pace of change. So in this digital world, what are we doing to actually prepare? So what steps are either security or risk practitioners taking to keep up with the velocity of the digital business? And I'll start with you, Andrew, in terms of sort of from an academia perspective, what are we doing to train people who realize and have the sense of urgency and have the skills? Is there courses on, I don't know, DevOps, or like what are you doing to train people to cope with the pace and velocity of digital?
Well, we're working with you guys, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, look, we're doing all we can as one university, but partnering with the sector. We have everything from we have run programs in schools to go and work with children to get them to think about cybersecurity, engage with it as a potential career. We run pathway programs with the polytech type providers. We run undergraduate programs. We run conversion masters. So this is, I guess, one to talk about. We know now that it's not one job for life anymore. At some point, we're going to reskill, change career path. So we have what's called a conversion master. So anyone with a degree in literally anything, even accounting, could come in and become a cybersecurity professional at that mid-management towards leadership career path. And that's been really popular. Additionally, we're changing the way that we deliver our courses. So again, that master's now, we have an online version that instead of, back when I was a boy, which was a long time ago, you used to front up to a lecture, you'd stand in a room for 2 hours and some person would stand there and talk at you while you madly tried to scribble down every note they were taking. The higher education world, that's now long gone. Students are demanding, or have on-demand need for smaller parts of information when they want it, how they want it, with content-rich media. So in terms of a master's today of 2 semesters a year, 24 weeks of a whole lot of doing nothing, we've now developed an online master's that runs in 7-week intense mode blocks. So effectively in 2 years, equivalent part-time, you could finish a full master's. And you can just drop in and out of that as you like. So you can do a module, drop out. So the idea is that people can be reskilling, upskilling whilst in their environment. Again, also, it's things like we're embarking on developing a security operations centre, like really big one that we're working very closely with RSA on, and that will deliver, as you said, DevOps, the ability to, that when our students graduate, they've had hands-on experience with not only the various technologies, but actually doing it themselves so they can come out and hopefully be ready to go when they hit industry.
Very heartening to hear. Thank you. Thank you.
Part of our strategy is to look into capacity and capability building. As a national agency, again, we are working very closely with secondary school. For example, like we have a program telling them this is the problem statement and whatnot. So you have to understand what is the problem, and we invite them for a debate, because every yearly we have our own conference back in Malaysia, organized by Cybersecurity Malaysia, and they have put their thoughts and whatnot. It's really good to see, the school children to be able to embrace and understand the digital risk altogether. And also we are working with our own university and also foreign university. We have a satellite lab, to embark into our research development, innovation, and also commercialization. It's a trend, or it's a part of the program compulsory by the Ministry of Finance to be able to come up with a certain project or certain R&D project, to be able to understand this is the gap, and to be able to provide certain tools and whatnot. And last but not least, I would like to share that Cybersecurity Malaysia, we also have our own professional certification, whereby we work with colleges, we work with universities, so that they are, have a two thing, so that when they graduated at the end of the day, they can receive their own academic, certification, and also professional certification, because they will be able to, understand when we as a cybersecurity practitioner, we go to the universities, to the student, to tell them that this is what really happening and whatnot as a practitioner, and providing trainings. And at the end of the day, after the training, they have to go through exams. And from the exam, if they pass the exam, they will be able to get certification, and they are ready for the market. So this is some of the programs that I would like to share with the audience today.
Great, thank you. Vishal, speed.
So one is those organizations which are in technology are already measuring digital business separately, because it is important. Those who are not are measuring, having business parameters to look at how digital is changing their business models, right? And that's happening. Number two, it's also about capacity building, right? So both from a national point of view as well as from a corporate point of view. So there is fair amount of focus on organizations are building on training. What are the different tools and enablers to help organizations adopt digital transformation? Massive training programs are happening as we speak. I know technology companies are creating mandatory programs for people to understand how to cope with this world. Number three is from a cybersecurity perspective, how do you train your people to really engage in the new model, to really give the right advice for risk management, and how do you embed security in all the digital transformation which is happening, especially DevSecOps. And that is also a change management and an organization, embedding program. And fourth is, how do you adopt digital in cyber itself? And how do we build, in terms of building threat management platforms and threat hunting platforms and new age technologies to really, leapfrog even adopting digital within the cyber itself. So all these four things are transforming from a cyber point of view.
Awesome. Thank you.